One thing I've learned, if you don't hold their feet to the fire, everybody gets burned.
Hold on. Before you start waving around that freedom of speech thing, when you're in a crowded movie theater and you scream fire, you better be able to smell smoke. You come on this radio show and you start saying incandescent things like that, you better have more behind you, pal, than just your thumb. I've been listening to talk radio for years, and one thing I just can't stand is when the host has to, push his way on the people, beat the callers into his way of thinking, extending his ego, or when the callers call in and say something so outrageous and the host lets it go unchallenged. The sign you're on the road to truth is the lack of contradiction. You want to find truth, you just don't simply believe somebody because of their authority or their degree, or you listen to what they say, you test it against reality, and you hold their feet to the fire. We are back and we are live. Feet to the fire. I'm your host, James, out the Yanchek, the Black Knight of Talk Radio. Feet to the Fire Radio in its, 19th year. And we've come down over the last few weeks. We've been talking about, I've been looking at actual real options that are available for us during this whole fight between tyranny and oppression, between and inside, it's not just one side, tyranny, oppression. You have tyranny, oppression, then you have the layers on each side of people who are liars and traitors and cheats and whatnot. It's like you're having people on your side are very untrustworthy, and you're hoping to be able to win, and win meaning freedoms and so forth, with all these various players. And over the weeks, I've been trying to take an objective look, yet realistic as well. I mean, as far as practical possibilities, and narrow it down each week. We would narrow it down because of choices made in the previous week. And now we are winding down to the last major event, which will set in stone our future, in my case, probably the rest of my life, but for a long-term future. And that is the turning over of power to Joe Biden and the Democrats and the left, which is communistic or, socialistic is the euphemism for communism. But tyranny and oppression is what they're saying, what their platform has been openly saying. And in these last week, since the Congress pretty much failed us into, at least looking into all of the evidence of fraud that literally stole the election from the rightful winner, Donald Trump, since they kind of threw that all down, what we've been looking at now is the results. Since that has happened, the Biden groups and so forth have been pretty brazen about what their plans are in terms of what they're going to do to the Trump side and so forth. Pretty brazen about it. So it's not really wondering what's going to happen. I guess it's wondering if they follow through on it, but it's not looking good. There's a caravan coming up from Honduras. You have Joe Biden saying he's going to legalize 11 million illegal aliens, and then of course they will vote and get the talks. So what I wanted to do was look at as we go to the inauguration, which is the 20th, which is the final stage. There is much rumor and talk about arrests and insurrection act and so forth to arrest them and restore the rightful republic and all this. So, I mean, everything from restoring it back before to the 1800s when it got compromised to England. There's all. I'm not going to go through all of that stuff, but believe me, it's out there all over the place. What I see coming up here is we basically have two choices. There's two roads, and inside those two roads, there's various levels of that road. So I wanted to go through what I see for the future, and then there's always a possibility of something coming from left field. Like all of a sudden you get there, and then there's another actual road that appears. But what I see happening is either Donald Trump and or the military decide to take over in martial law because of a stolen election and corruption. And in that realm, they will have re-elections, new elections, for president and Congress and whatnot, and then relinquish the martial law back to civil law after that point. That would be the way to look at it. This is not the first time this happened on the planet, believe me. And that would be the one side. The other side would be that Joe Biden would be taken over, would be president, and Kamala Harris vice president. And they will start to institute as fast as possible on their first day him signing all kinds of executive orders to basically erase everything that Trump did and move their socialist/communist stuff forward. Like I mentioned, to legalize and give citizenship of some type to the 11 million illegal aliens, open the borders, join back into the Paris Accord, perhaps reverse Iran, and all this other stuff that's been going on. Now, even with those two choices, there is going to be a level of what it could be. For example, what I just mentioned could happen is more like the middle left way. Let's say left and right. Now, I'm only doing it because right being conservative, Republican, left being liberal, whatever, progressive, communist, whatever. So in the left way, there is what came to me was a very ominous possibility. And again, I'm dealing in realities. These are futures that could happen. There's evidence to back it up, and I'll go through overwhelm. The very negative level of the left turn, the left choice, would be that there would be a false flag staged, an attack of some type staged, blamed on Trump supporters and Trump, and depending upon what level of that happens will decide the repercussion. So going to the left, the easy way, if I can use the term, would be what I just described before about starting to appoint these things and erase the laws and erase the EOs and so on like that. And then the other way would be that there's a big hoopla and people die, and they say it's Trump and his supporters. You know, it's the modern equivalent of the Reichstag fire, where Hitler burned the Reichstag, blamed the communists, so the socialists could put him in power as the Fuhrer. In this case, what would happen is they would, instead of burning the Reichstag, they would have an attack on the Capitol. They would blame Trump and his supporters. They would probably arrest him and the supporters, and then make them terrorist organizations, and anybody who was listed as a MAGA supporter of any type would be on the list of suspect, no-fly list. You would lose jobs and all this stuff. That's the hardest left The hardest right, I say, is when these are would be where Trump caused the insurrection, or the military could do this on their own after Biden is sworn in, determining that there was fraud and protecting the Constitution and protecting, they take over martial law for a little while. But that could also mean major law attacks breaking out all over the country. The left could have planned a la a souped-up Weatherman type deal where there could be strategic infrastructures would be attacked in striking back from this event. So you have both sides of we'll say right and left, the extremes would be a bloody civil war. Destructions, inconveniences, to say the least, loss of power or infrastructures, and whatnot. As you work your way in, it gets less dramatic, and on one side, the right would be successful in arresting the bad people. They would have take over the emergency broadcast system and start to show out the evidence and lay the case down. They would have tribunals. They would have the trials of it. Once that's cleaned up, they would relinquish that power, have a new election, and then the civilians take over. That's like the good side of the right, and the bad side, the good side of the left is bad for the right, but it would be less traumatic in the country. They would go on forward, pushing their agendas, and they would simply step forward, and they would have two more states, D.C. and Puerto Rico. Therefore, it had 4 more Democratic senators. You would have perhaps expanding the Supreme Court, so you'd have a liberal Supreme Court, or I should say left. I don't even want to call them anymore because it's like it's a neo-communism, it's a neo-Maoist, neo-Bolshevik type of situation. It's what happened in Russia and China years ago, having it here, and then they would start moving forward, changing the laws and clamping down. So it would go into a tyranny that Russia and China have seen. China still has. Only with the advantage of having super surveillance techniques, super weaponry, super abilities to cut off credit and banking and all that, which didn't happen. As it was harder, let's say, less omnipresent than it was back in the 1917 Russia. So so you see, you have both sides, in worst case scenario, is war, death, destruction, collapse. And as you move in, you have a successful left working its way into tyranny legally and wiping out their opponents in a more legal, well, I shouldn't say legal, in a more statistical manner of limiting them. They can't become Congress anymore. They can't do this, that. It's, and the other one is having elections and redoing it again. And people have said, and the people out there really believe, and again, it's possible. All right, that's why I'm bringing it up, that Trump is going to have this. This is all planned. You have the military now surrounding D.C. Well, it's the National Guard. Militarized National Guard around D.C. There's 20,000, 25,000. They're putting up fences and razor wire, and they're blocking trains and public transportation into the area. You have to go through checkpoints. That's all happening, right? So from there, is it going to be that is a net that's being done so that when the Insurrection Act happens, or the military decides to do this, they're going to just close that net in on those people? Or is that net now going to turn over to the Joe Biden camp, which will turn D.C. permanently into a militarized area to keep out anybody who would want to go in and upset them politically or legally or militarily? What will the military do with a militarized left that maybe wants to hunt down Trump supporters? If there is a false flag, and What if on the farther side you have the false flag where Biden is sworn in and then assassinated, blaming the Trump side? They all go crazy now and start hunting him down, and Kamala Harris gets sworn in right away. Now she's the president, which eventually is going to happen. We all realize that Biden will be bowing out one way or the other. And so in this particular camp, if you want to get the hardest, most, Lenin, Stalin, Maoist type way, you simply have a false flag, shoot Biden, put in Kamala Harris, and then blame Trump and his supporters. He gets arrested and for that matter, killed. That's terrible stuff. This is all really possible. I'm not saying it's probable. I don't know what probable is. I think the harshest ones on left and right are the least probable of the options. And I think, for me personally, I think what I think has happened, and I wrote a brief little, not even an article on my website, saying that Trump has made the decision not to go the blood route. Because if he sent in the troops and did all this stuff, blood would be shed, big time. And again, the reprisal from the left and the deep state would now be involved actively in targeting and so forth. It would be a lot of blood. So I'm saying that Trump heavy-heartedly decided to not take the blood route, which in the spiritual way would be the higher ground. So now there's nothing that we can do. God can work freely. What I mean by that is, God, everybody talks about God. It's his way. He's pushed his will, and nobody can go against his will. While that's true, I don't think that's really how God works. God kind of looks at us and says, here's what you should do. I'm here to help. Here's my guides. But if you take it in your own hands, then, okay. So if you want to have a blood revolution to solve this stuff, go ahead. It's been done many times before, and many times it's successful. And then you have a reprieval of hostilities until the next time evil grows again. So I'll put a link to this little article on my website. There was an article that was sent to me. It's a Russian article, saying why Trump lost the coup, and I'll put the link for that inside. I put the link inside my article. But the point I wanted to get at is we could say Trump. This is quote. We can say Trump lost because he did not want to bring the country to the revolution and the associated big blood. And in his own way, he's even right. Nowhere and never in history has anything such happened without massive bloodshed. During the 4 years of the Civil War, total military losses alone mounted to 664,000 people, or 2.1% of the population. And that's not counting the loss of about 3 million more people as a result of hunger, disease, banditry, and whatnot. If the same proportion adjusted for modern specifics were transferred to the present, then the price of the second Civil War in America could be up to 25 to 30 million lives. So whether Donald Trump is right or was wrong, who did not dare to step on the revolutionary path, let everyone decide for themselves. When I read that article, that moved me. And I think that Trump lost his clue because it came to this point. You can go back and replay the last 4 years and say, well, he should have done this, he should have done that, and this and that. But your opinion doesn't count because you never got elected and been in a position to do anything. So that's why it's like somebody sitting at home telling the quarterback how he should have called the game, done the game, or how this guy should have ran or whatnot. You're not there. You would never get on the field. You would never be hired. You would never be in that position. And so your opinion is pretty much meaningless. So I think the choices that Donald Trump is making is to do his job up to the last minute, then let what happens happen. And then God, I'm not saying this is in his conscience. He's not going, yeah, well, I'll let God take care of it. I don't mean that. There's another line There's a line from the Lord of the Rings, which I like, when they were visiting Laurelin, to the queen. I can't think of her name right now. Galadriel, right? The queen elf or whatever. Frodo says, "Look, I'll give you the ring. You're smart and powerful. I'm just a little hobbit. You take the ring and you deal with it." And then that was her test, because she was wise and powerful, and then she explains that she would try to do good with it and would corrupt her and all this stuff. But he says, "Well, what would you want to happen? All these choices, what would you want to happen?" And she had a good line. She wishes that she wants whatever should be to be, shall be. Whatever should be, shall be, is her wish. And by letting this go and deciding not to go into blood, you remember, he has stopped the wars, brought people back. He's been committed to it. Once he got to a certain point in there, committed to not blood. By not choosing to go into the blood way and apparently allow the left to win, this could allow the avenging of the spiritual realm, God realm, for what is happening. It's a theory that if you take vengeance in your hand, and I don't know the Bible verse offhand, I wish I should have had this, but I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember things. I get the point. It says, with vengeance is mine and all this. If you take out revenge on the person who's harmed you, well, then boom, it's done. Then whatever happens, and that's it. Whereas if you allow the Lord to take care of it, he will do it in the most just and productive way. So what Donald Trump knowingly or unknowingly may be doing here by not going into the blood route is opening up the heavenly realms to intervene, which would be the highest, best, good way to do it, rather than humans deciding to kill one another to stop the other side from doing their thing. And it's a difficult time, because throughout history you have people fighting the bad guys. They beat them off, and they have a period of peace, and then it builds back up again, and then they end up and sometimes the bad guys win for a while, but then they end up dissolving and it deteriorating, and somebody comes in and helps them. You have this battle back and forth. So what I'm looking at is perhaps by not going into a big bloody war, which who knows what the complexity theory could actually blossom out throughout the whole world. Maybe, China or whoever would say, here's a good time to go in and attack the United States where they're busy, or who knows? Who knows? See, the complexity theory is a great thing to lay over this, because there's so many there's so many pieces that interlock that when you make a decision here, it ends up turning the clockworks of the universe. And so by making this choice to not go is really the highest of the high roads, rather than choosing to go to some type of a war. So what will happen from his choice, as I see it, would allow the left to work freely to tear down the Constitution, the country, and whatnot. This is what it looks like as we go forward. But if you decide to not take the blood route, you don't know how God would handle with this. Now, a lot of people may be listening, or probably not, because most people who would dispute divine actions on earth probably wouldn't be listening to me anyway. But you might say, well, why? I mean, all the stuff that's happened in the past, why would he do it now? And I'm thinking, this is the choice that I have not seen happen, where the choice is to choose not to do evil, regardless of what that means. Jesus chose not to fight back. Now, I presume we would agree that Jesus had the wherewithal to simply stop his being attacked. And he didn't. He allowed, and he prayed to God not by my will, by thy will. I didn't want to go through with this stuff, so you might look at it and say Trump weighed out the options of the blood way and the no blood way on his choices and decided to not choose the blood way and allow God to be able to look at what's going on. Now, if you want to go, into Revelation and Matthew, it's predicted there will be some pretty hard times, and it's worldwide. It's not just America's at the center of the world. It might be one of the last bastions of possibilities for freedom. But we know there's a lot of not freedom in America now anyway. But we've always had a choice of fight or die. And I often wonder, taking the Obi-Wan connection, if I can get into Star Wars, when he was fighting Darth Vader, I would presume Obi-Wan could have won that battle. But the larger battle, spiritual battle, was when he stopped fighting and Darth Vader killed him. It's set into motion using complexity theories. I know this is a movie, but I'm just using it as a metaphor. It's set into motion things which ended up destroying the whole evil empire. Now, I'm only looking at Star Wars, the one movie, because they made sequels, but that's, I'm keeping the metaphor tight inside here. So that's what I'm looking at, is the choices that are made. If you have a choice between killing and not killing, and you choose not killing and you die, or the harm is done, God avenges you. If you choose to take in your own hands others' blood on this, you might look at other countries and say, yeah, well, look at Soviet Union. It was 7 years before it fell apart. And even that wasn't, there was a lot of stuff that went on. Blood was shed on there. And I'm thinking that's probably the one thing we don't have in the world. And that what's staying God's hand from coming in and once and for all separating the wheat and the chaff, the evil and the bad and all that, maybe it's because we kept going, we got this, God. And I said in my article, I'll put it there because I wrote it down. Perhaps, and I'm reading from my writing now, perhaps Trump lost because he balked at starting a civil war that would have killed tens of millions of people. And as a Christian, I cannot criticize him for that. Perhaps consciously or subconsciously, he placed it in God's hands by not taking it in his hands or man's hands, which would have been overflowing with blood. And I think it's very interesting. I think it's an important thing to make here, that point is not being made out there in all the talking. If anyone has been goaded into a civil war by lying, soulless, evil, elitist ruling class, by relentless personal and professional, political and moral attacks, it's Trump. If anybody would be goaded into it, it'd be President Trump. Yet, in the end, perhaps it was his love of people that held back any ego or pride that have overwhelmed lesser men into the spilling of innocent collateral blood. Perhaps it is the revolutions that stayed God's early intervention. It's okay, God, we got this, resulting in, as it were, a blood sacrifice to stay evil's complete domination until later. So it's like when you go into war to fight off the bad guys, you're making a blood sacrifice to Satan, which satisfies the bloodlust of Satan and allows things to rebuild again, so it can be challenged and then more blood sacrifice. You see my point on this? It's like it's more important not to live, but how you lived spiritually. It'd be better. I mean, I'm just working this out. It would be better to live in tyranny without murdering than it would be to live in, quote, freedom by murdering. This could be the last lessons that humandom needs to learn over the thousands of years of the seesaw of wars and and the shedding of blood. Like the national debt and the Federal Reserve, the debt keeps getting bigger each time. Each time there is a blood sacrifice and then a apparent peace, the next one gets bigger and more bloodier, and it becomes bigger, more worldwide, and so forth. Perhaps a plunge into complete world tyranny will be so complete this time that Gabriel's horn will blow, and man realizes its utter futility to say, it's okay, God, we got this. We can't get this. You know, it's set up now where if tyranny, as it appears, will take root in the capital, ultimately and completely, they will have weapons more terrible than ever before on this planet. They will have the ability to monitor and to spy on people more completely than ever happened possibly before. They will be able to enforce tyrannical laws more completely than ever before because of this. So it seems that we're going into this. The choices that have been made along the way have veered away from major blood. And I'm thinking that if the next people in the White House and in Congress pick up their own sword and start blood shedding, that this is where righteous justice can come in from the other side, from God's side, or what have you. And if you want to toss in, I've been doing shows about this, you want to toss in that perhaps we are in the Revelation where, you know, Satan has been cast onto earth and woe into earth for his time is little and all this stuff. We may be rounding the bound up to this point. But the whole point of this is that when you make your choices, you have to take the highest road, not the more pleasant one or not the one with the best kind of options. It's like, you want to cheat and knock your business competitor out of business so you can succeed? Or do you actually work on making the best product? And, you know, and now cheating, short-term gain, destroying other companies and throwing people out of work, and for that matter, countries taking their whole country's wealth and and having them live in squalor. This is the way to get rich and so forth. And this is where the Bible talks about you can't serve God and mammon. You can't serve this pigeon. So, I mean, I'm looking at this choice now. I mean, I'm also recording this for anybody who may be listening to this later on the 17th, which is several days before the actual inaugural and the final choice of whether or not there'd be any kind of insurrection act or some variant that'll be taken into place. And so I am saying that Trump made the decision. He's not going to do that. And it's not because for his own skin, because they'll go out of office, and depending upon what they do, whether it be a false flag or simply just going forward in tyranny, they're going to hound him to death, him and his family and his main followers. They're going to be hounded. They're already saying this. Just saying it openly out in Congress, out in there, that these people should be shamed and whatnot. So it's not that he's saving his skin by doing this. He's actually looking at being harassed for the rest of his life, however long or short that may be, and his family. So if he chooses this point, this is not the easy choice. This is the hard choice. So I'm going to say my personal thing is I look forward into the future, which is a few days from now. He's not going to have the Insurrection Act. They're not going to take this stuff. I can't speak for the whole military. I'm assuming they're not going to do it either. And we'll have to see how it goes. But to me, that would be the higher road in terms of spirituality than the blood road. If evil's going to spill blood, so be it. It doesn't mean like my innocent blood is less innocent. For example, when you bomb, you're bombing another country and killing many innocent people and children, the elderly and whatnot. Well, it's because the tyranny over there is so bad we had to do that. This is why I think we should protect ourselves, not go out and attack other countries, because you have a moral high ground when someone's coming into your area and you're defending yourself, rather than going bombing the hell out of their civilians in their area to stop them from coming here. I'm not, that's just my way of looking at it. I'm trying to put it together. I'm trying to figure out my way through the world so that I learn the ways of God. In fact, people talk about, well, God is going to come and crush, and mountains will fall down. A lot of the way I look at it is that God created the universe as a big machine to react or work with the choices made by those in it. So that a lot of these things that are happening because of the choices that human beings are making, not decisions that God is making. So it'll be interesting to see as we look from hindsight at all these events in the hereafter, to see how it would be humans and us who have triggered these situations or caused them, rather than God sitting up on up on high just throwing lightning bolts down. I imagine what I'm saying is not going to be that popular or not sexy, because in a good movie you would have Chuck Norris parachuting in from the sky as they arrest all the bad guys, and we all live happily ever after, or at least till the next wave of bad guys. But the way I see it in our government, there's so many bad guys on so many levels, both friends and foes, quote unquote, that I think the answer is to more or less allow evil to play its full hand and collapse, and then have God come in. But that's how I look at it, and it's not a pleasant future, because it's not like it as I see it, and as I've talked about it several times in the show, it's going to play out painfully over a time frame. And that, quotes from Revelation that says, why are you going to let the people keep dying, the righteous keep dying? And the reply is that, here, take this robe and wash yourself white, clean in the robe, and allow the people who can make a stand for God and who will suffer for God. He allows them to make that stand. It's almost like if you're making a stand for good and it's going to cost you, that is a blessing for you in the reward that waits for you to do it. So it's almost like stopping a race so that nobody gets hurt in the race, but then you're denying the people who win the race or participate in the race the actual participation and winning in it. Maybe it's a bad analog, but these times are here for everything that God does is for the best, highest good. And so even this times when evil apparently wins, it's for the best, highest good. And what we should do is take a really strong inventory of ourselves, where we're at, what problems and sins are in our life, and use the energy and the time to get yourself ready, because it sounds like the trumpets will sound in our lifetimes, and we want to be ready and be happy, be ourselves be ready for that time frame. So we'll be the wise virgins who trim their lamps with extra wick, extra oil, and so forth, rather than coming up half empty. I think about that a lot. And this is like in your own lifetime anyway. So that before you die, you want to try and get your act in order, so when you die, it's a nicer transition. And now you're talking about the return of Jesus, the greatest event in the history of this world, and all of a sudden your lamp is dim, so this is where I look at this stuff. I look inward and say, what should I be doing now, both for my own spiritual growth as well as helping those around me? Remember, every decision you make is for the highest, best good of everyone in your influence as well as yourself. And as a president, he's got to make a choice for the highest, best good of hundreds of millions of people, not to mention how it reaches out around the world. That's a heavy burden. Far be it for me to criticize Donald Trump if he does not go through with the Insurrection Act, which we all apparently would want to see happen, to see the good guys win. My whole thing is like, who are the good guys anymore? We don't even know who they are. They're being revealed for us as how many bad. Look what happened with McConnell, and how he completely backed off of trying to look for the fraud. A lot of people have stood up in these last times and really shown their colors. And this is what the time is, I think we are spiritually, is we're in a time of the revealing and a time of the choosing. You have to make a stand, make your choice. You're going to stand for evil or you're going to stand for good. And by not making your choice, you've already made the choice. And so that's why I look forward to this Wednesday, when these decisions are made by people that are beyond my influence, are going to be setting the tone of how things happen for our future, for future years and decades. And so if either side chooses the blood path, it's going to be pretty bloody. But the whole path of the left looks bad as it is. But keep your eyes up and look at high, because when Jesus talked about when all these things happen, lift your heads up to the sky. Your redemption is nigh. And so this is where, as bad as it may get, it points to the one who's going to intervene and shorten those days, lest all lives be done, be ended, all flesh be killed. It's tough. It's a tough thing I'm saying here. It's very sobering. It's a lifetime crystallization. These upcoming days are going to be the most significant days in our life. Granted, people have had things happen in their lives, but I'm kind of looking at in like an average. So I'm going to be praying in this next few days for everyone, but also so that things can come up in my life. I would exhort you in things in your life to get your act together, because it looks to me like we are in the latter days, and all it does is get more and more latterly. So the people who are coming up with these YouTubes saying information is coming out, they're going to do this and that. Look, it's Sunday. There's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. By Wednesday, we'll know. So rather than get all crazy and get into rumors and all this stuff, just break away from it, pray, get yourself together, and get ready for Wednesday. Because once that date comes and goes, we have now hit that point of no return, that we're in that new paradigm, that whatever's been chosen. And I would say that prayer would be warranted in that. So I think I'll end it here and just pray, "Thy will be done. What should be shall be." To quote the Elfin Queen, "Thy will be done." That's what I would pray for. So, all righty. We'll see in a few days. I'm being limited to what I can do on Facebook. So Gab is the way to go, I think. We'll see you then.
Oh, my old friend, the one who walked before, the one who walk again, the ancient one of old, with wisdom for the new. Revive our inner sight, retell your timeless truths. Oh, it's your one.
Feet to Fire is a production of IPS Media Works on the OnSync Radio network of stations.